Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual activity in a student's submission for a core course assignment, suggesting a potential breach of academic integrity. According to the Alonso de Ojeda University's established guidelines for academic conduct, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the instructor to take? Option A. Advise the student to resubmit the assignment with a warning about academic honesty, without further formal reporting. Option B. Discuss the observed anomalies with colleagues in the department to seek their opinion on the student's behavior. Option C. Immediately inform the student of the suspected violation and assign a failing grade for the assignment. Option D. Document the observed anomalies and formally report the incident to the university's Academic Integrity Committee for investigation. Correct answer is C. Immediately inform the student of the suspected violation and assign a failing grade for the assignment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the immediate identification and application of the Alonso de Ojeda University-specific internal regulations regarding academic integrity and the proper handling of potential misconduct. The core of the challenge lies in discerning the correct procedural pathway for addressing a situation that could impact a student's academic record and future. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken is fair, consistent with established university policy, and upholds the principles of due process. The correct approach involves initiating the formal reporting procedure as outlined in the Alonso de Ojeda University's academic integrity policy. This policy mandates that any suspected instance of academic dishonesty must be documented and reported to the designated Academic Integrity Committee, or office. This ensures a standardized and impartial investigation, providing the student with an opportunity to respond to the allegations and receive a fair hearing. This approach is correct because it directly adheres to the university's established regulatory framework for academic misconduct, which is designed to protect both the integrity of the academic environment and the rights of the student. An incorrect approach would be to directly confront the student and impose a penalty without following the established reporting procedures. This fails to comply with the university's internal regulations, which require a formal investigation process. Ethically, it bypasses due process, potentially leading to an unfair outcome for the student. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed behavior, assuming it is a minor issue or not worth pursuing. This is a failure to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity as stipulated in its policies. By not reporting, the institution misses an opportunity to address potential systemic issues and to educate the student on the importance of academic honesty, thereby undermining the educational mission. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the suspected misconduct with other faculty members or students outside of the formal reporting channels. This violates the principle of confidentiality and can lead to reputational damage for the student and the university, as well as potentially prejudicing any future investigation. The university's regulations likely include provisions for maintaining the privacy of such matters until a formal determination is made. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the Alonso de Ojeda University's specific policies and procedures related to academic integrity. When faced with potential misconduct, the professional should 1. Identify the relevant policy, 2. Gather objective evidence of the suspected misconduct, 3. Follow the prescribed reporting protocol without delay, 4. Maintain confidentiality throughout the process, 5. Cooperate fully with the designated investigative body. This systematic approach ensures fairness, compliance, and the preservation of academic standards. Question 2. Investigation of a fellow applicant during the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam reveals they are surreptitiously using unauthorized notes. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action? Option A. Confront the applicant directly and demand they cease their actions. Option B. Ignore the observed cheating to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. Option C. Discreetly report the observed cheating to the examination proctor or designated invigilator. Option D. Offer the applicant a discreet warning and a chance to stop on their own. The correct answer is C. Discreetly report the observed cheating to the examination proctor or designated invigilator. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a university entrance exam especially one as significant as the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, and lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation, upholding ethical principles while respecting the examination's integrity. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the observed misconduct to the appropriate university authorities. This upholds the principles of academic honesty and fairness, which are foundational to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's regulatory framework. By reporting, the individual acts as a responsible member of the academic community, ensuring that the examination process remains impartial and that all candidates are evaluated on their own merit. This aligns with the implicit ethical guidelines of any educational institution that values integrity and equitable assessment. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed cheating. This failure to act condones unethical behavior and undermines the fairness of the examination for all other candidates. It violates the unspoken ethical obligation to contribute to a just academic environment. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly and attempt to resolve the issue without involving university officials. While seemingly proactive, this bypasses the established procedures for handling academic misconduct. It could lead to an escalation of the situation, potential personal risk, and importantly, it does not guarantee that the university's disciplinary processes will be initiated, thus failing to uphold the integrity of the exam. A further incorrect approach would be to offer the student assistance in a way that could be construed as aiding or abetting cheating, even if with good intentions. This directly compromises the examination's integrity and violates the ethical duty to maintain a level playing field. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the institution's policies on academic integrity and a commitment to reporting any observed violations through the designated channels. Professionals should prioritize fairness, honesty, and the upholding of established rules and ethical codes. When faced with a dilemma, the first step is to identify the relevant ethical principles and institutional regulations, followed by a decision to act in a manner that best preserves these. Question 3. The performance metrics show a significant disparity in the scores achieved by candidates in the essay section of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. Considering the exam's specific guidelines on evaluating qualitative assessments, which of the following actions best reflects adherence to the regulatory framework? Option A. Directly adjust the essay scores based on a general understanding of essay grading rubrics to ensure a more uniform distribution of results. Option B. Seek advice from colleagues at other universities on how they typically handle score discrepancies in essay sections. Option C. Consult the official Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam handbook and any supplementary guidelines provided for essay evaluation to determine the appropriate course of action. Option D. Reevaluate the essay section based on a personal interpretation of what constitutes a good essay, independent of the exam's stated criteria. The correct answer is A. Directly adjust the essay scores based on a general understanding of essay grading rubrics to ensure a more uniform distribution of results. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and apply the specific regulatory framework of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam to a situation involving the evaluation of student performance. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the nuances of the exam's guidelines regarding the acceptable use of performance metrics and the ethical considerations involved in their application. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made aligns strictly with the established rules and principles of the university's entrance examination process, avoiding any deviation that could compromise the integrity of the assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's official documentation, specifically focusing on sections pertaining to performance evaluation, data interpretation, and the ethical conduct of examiners. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the established regulatory framework. By consulting the definitive source of guidelines, the individual ensures that their understanding and application of performance metrics are in line with the university's explicit requirements and ethical standards for the entrance exam. This demonstrates a commitment to procedural fairness and the integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to rely on general educational assessment principles or best practices from other institutions. This is ethically and regulatorily flawed because the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam has its own unique set of rules and guidelines. Applying external standards, even if considered sound in other contexts, would violate the principle of strict jurisdiction compliance mandated for this exam. Such an approach risks misinterpreting or overlooking specific requirements unique to the Alonso de Ojeda University, potentially leading to unfair evaluations or procedural errors. Another incorrect approach would be to make assumptions about the interpretation of performance metrics based on personal experience or anecdotal evidence. This is professionally unacceptable as it bypasses the established regulatory framework. Assumptions, especially in the context of a high-stakes entrance exam, can lead to biased judgments and a departure from the objective criteria set forth by the university. It fails to demonstrate due diligence in understanding and applying the specific rules governing the exam. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Identify the specific regulatory framework governing the situation, in this case, the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam regulations. 2. Locate and thoroughly review all relevant sections of that framework pertaining to the issue at hand: performance metrics, evaluation criteria, ethical conduct. 3. If ambiguity exists, seek clarification from the designated authority or governing body responsible for the exam's administration. 4. Apply the interpreted regulations consistently and objectively to the situation. 5. Document the decision-making process and the rationale based on the regulatory framework. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a simplified, less comprehensive assessment for a portion of applicants to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam could significantly reduce administrative costs. However, this simplified assessment might not fully capture the nuanced academic capabilities of all candidates. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for this university entrance exam? Option A. Propose a tiered assessment system where candidates demonstrating exceptional prior academic achievement are subject to the simplified assessment, while others undergo the full evaluation, to balance cost reduction with fairness. Option B. Advocate for an increase in the exam fee to cover the costs of the current comprehensive assessment, arguing that the value of a rigorous and fair admissions process justifies the expense for all applicants. Option C. Reject the simplified assessment outright, maintaining the current comprehensive evaluation process to ensure maximum adherence to the exam's regulatory framework, and uphold the principle of thorough candidate assessment. Option D. Prioritize the cost savings by adopting the simplified assessment, arguing that the overall efficiency gains justify the minor risk of overlooking some candidates' full potential. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the cost savings by adopting the simplified assessment, arguing that the overall efficiency gains justify the minor risk of overlooking some candidates' full potential. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing potential financial gains against the ethical imperative of protecting vulnerable individuals and adhering to the strict guidelines of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's regulatory framework. The exam's regulations, as stipulated, emphasize a rigorous adherence to established procedures and a commitment to fairness and integrity in the admissions process. A cost-benefit analysis, while a common business tool, must be applied within the confines of these specific university regulations, which prioritize academic merit and equitable opportunity over purely financial considerations. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring compliance with the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam-specific regulations. This means that any proposed change, even if seemingly beneficial from a cost-saving perspective, must first be evaluated against its potential impact on fairness, transparency, and the established criteria for admission. The regulatory framework for this exam likely mandates a standardized and objective evaluation of all candidates, and any deviation that could introduce bias or compromise this objectivity would be a direct violation. Ethical considerations, such as ensuring equal opportunity for all applicants regardless of their socioeconomic background or perceived ability to contribute financially, are paramount and supersede purely economic justifications. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the cost savings of a less rigorous assessment method fails to recognize the fundamental purpose of a university entrance exam, which is to identify qualified candidates based on established academic standards. This approach would violate the spirit and letter of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exams regulations by potentially lowering the bar for admission or introducing subjective elements that are not permitted. Another incorrect approach that suggests prioritizing candidates who can demonstrate a higher potential for future financial contributions to the university, even if framed as a long-term benefit, fundamentally undermines the principle of merit-based admissions. This would introduce an element of financial gatekeeping, which is ethically unsound and likely prohibited by the exam's governing principles, as it creates an unfair advantage for wealthier applicants. A third incorrect approach that proposes streamlining the assessment process by reducing the number of evaluators or the depth of their review, while appearing to save resources, risks compromising the thoroughness and accuracy of the evaluation. This could lead to misjudgments of candidate suitability and a failure to uphold the high standards expected by the university, thereby violating the regulatory requirement for a comprehensive and fair assessment. Professionals in this context should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. Any proposed change or initiative must be rigorously assessed for its compliance with these rules. The primary consideration should always be the integrity and fairness of the admissions process. If a cost-benefit analysis suggests a potential improvement, the next step is to determine if this improvement can be achieved without compromising regulatory compliance or ethical standards. If there is any doubt, or if the proposed change introduces any form of bias or inequity, it should be rejected. Professionals must be prepared to advocate for decisions that uphold these principles, even if they are not the most financially expedient. Question 5. When evaluating applications for admission to the Alonso de Ojeda University, a member of the admissions committee discovers that one of the candidates is their sibling. The committee has established guidelines for assessing applications based on academic merit, extracurricular achievements, and personal essays. The committee member is aware of these guidelines and the importance of an impartial review process. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for this committee member? Option A. Discreetly contact other committee members to advocate for their siblings' admission, highlighting their strengths. Option B. Immediately declare the familial relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the siblings' application. Option C. Resign from the admissions committee without providing a specific reason for their departure. Option D. Proceed with evaluating the siblings' application as usual, ensuring to be extra objective to compensate for any potential bias. The correct answer is B. Immediately declare the familial relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the siblings' application. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and uphold the integrity of the admissions process at the Alonso de Ojeda University. The core difficulty lies in balancing personal relationships with professional responsibilities and adhering to the university's established guidelines for candidate evaluation. A rigorous and impartial assessment is paramount to ensure fairness and maintain the credibility of the university's selection criteria. The correct approach involves a transparent declaration of the familial relationship to the admissions committee and recusal from any part of the evaluation process for the candidate in question. This aligns with ethical principles of impartiality and conflict of interest management, which are implicitly embedded in the standards of academic institutions. By stepping aside, the individual ensures that the candidate's application is reviewed solely on its merits, free from any perceived or actual bias. This upholds the university's commitment to a fair and objective admissions process, safeguarding its reputation. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with evaluating the candidate without disclosing the relationship. This constitutes a breach of ethical conduct by failing to declare a conflict of interest. It undermines the principle of fairness, as the candidate might receive preferential treatment, even unintentionally. Such an action could lead to accusations of nepotism and damage the trust placed in the admissions committee and the university. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to influence other committee members to favor the candidate. This is a severe ethical violation, as it directly manipulates the evaluation process for personal gain. It not only compromises the integrity of the admissions decision, but also violates the trust placed in the individual as a member of the admissions committee. This action would likely result in disciplinary measures and damage the professional standing of the individual. A further incorrect approach would be to withdraw from the committee entirely without disclosing the specific reason for the withdrawal. While avoiding direct involvement, this action fails to address the underlying conflict of interest transparently. It leaves the committee unaware of a potential bias, which could lead to other members inadvertently overlooking the need for extra scrutiny or, conversely, overcompensating in a way that disadvantages the candidate. Transparency is key to managing conflicts effectively. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's policies on conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When a potential conflict arises, the first step is to identify it. Subsequently, the individual should consult relevant university guidelines or a supervisor if unsure. The paramount principle is to act in a manner that preserves the integrity and fairness of the process. This often means disclosing the conflict and recusing oneself from any decision-making related to the matter. Question 6. The performance metrics show a significant deviation in one specific section of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam for a particular candidate, raising questions about the validity of their overall score. According to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's regulatory framework, what is the most appropriate initial step to address this discrepancy? Option A. Immediately contact the candidate to inquire about potential external factors that may have influenced their performance in that specific section. Option B. Report the anomaly to the university's disciplinary committee for potential academic misconduct without further internal investigation. Option C. Initiate a formal review of the candidate's performance against the specific scoring rubrics and documented assessment guidelines for that section of the exam, cross-referencing with any declared special circumstances for the candidate. Option D. Assume a scoring error and adjust the candidate's score to align with their performance in other sections of the exam. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review of the candidate's performance against the specific scoring rubrics and documented assessment guidelines for that section of the exam, cross-referencing with any declared special circumstances for the candidate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and apply the specific academic regulations of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam in a situation where performance data might suggest a deviation from expected outcomes. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine academic underperformance, which requires standard remedial or supportive actions, and potential irregularities that might necessitate a more formal investigation under university statutes. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overreaction and underreaction, ensuring fairness to the student while upholding the integrity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the student's performance metrics against the established criteria and guidelines of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. This includes examining the specific scoring rubrics, any declared exceptions or special considerations, and the university's internal policies regarding assessment appeals and academic integrity. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principle of procedural fairness and adherence to the university's own regulatory framework. By systematically comparing the data to the established rules, the decision-maker ensures that any action taken is based on objective evidence and consistent with the university's governance. This upholds the integrity of the entrance exam and ensures that all candidates are evaluated according to the same standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume a procedural error or misconduct based solely on a single, potentially anomalous metric, without first consulting the specific regulations. This could lead to an unfounded accusation or an unnecessary escalation of the situation, causing undue stress to the student and potentially diverting resources from genuine issues. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the performance metrics entirely without any investigation, which would fail to address any potential systemic issues or individual needs that the data might highlight, thereby undermining the university's commitment to fair assessment. A third incorrect approach would be to apply external, generic academic standards or best practices that are not explicitly part of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's regulatory framework, thus violating the principle of jurisdiction-specific compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly identify the relevant regulatory framework. In this case, the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam regulations. Second, gather all pertinent data and performance metrics. Third, systematically compare the data against the established rules and guidelines, looking for discrepancies or potential violations. Fourth, consult with relevant university authorities or academic advisors if interpretation is unclear. Fifth, document all findings and the rationale for any decision made. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the specific institutional context. Question 7. Analysis of a scenario where a candidate, during the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, notices another candidate discreetly receiving answers from a hidden device. The candidate is under significant personal pressure to perform well and fears that reporting the incident might draw unwanted attention or jeopardize their own exam performance. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for this candidate? Option A. Discreetly inform the proctor or invigilator about the observed cheating without disrupting the exam flow. Option B. Ignore the incident, focusing solely on completing their own exam to avoid any potential negative repercussions. Option C. Confront the cheating candidate directly during the exam to stop the behavior. Option D. Make a note of the incident to report after the exam concludes, but do not inform the proctor during the exam. The correct answer is A. Discreetly inform the proctor or invigilator about the observed cheating without disrupting the exam flow. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation in a manner that upholds ethical standards and the principles of fair assessment. The correct approach involves a commitment to personal integrity and adherence to the Alonso de Ojeda University stated principles for its entrance exam. This means preparing diligently through legitimate study methods and understanding the material independently. The regulatory and ethical justification lies in the fundamental principle of academic honesty, which is paramount in any educational institution. The Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam regulations, by their very nature, presume that all candidates will engage in fair and honest competition. Any action that circumvents this principle, such as using unauthorized assistance, directly violates the spirit and letter of these regulations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field and a valid assessment of a candidate's knowledge and aptitude. An incorrect approach involves seeking or accepting unauthorized assistance during the exam. This is a direct violation of academic integrity policies and the explicit rules governing the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. Such an action undermines the validity of the assessment process and is considered academic misconduct. The ethical failure is the intent to gain an unfair advantage over other candidates who are relying on their own preparation. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the ethical implications of a peer offering unauthorized assistance, believing it is not one's responsibility to report it. Not actively participating, passively allowing academic dishonesty to occur without intervention, is also an ethical failure. University regulations often imply a duty of candor and cooperation with the institution's integrity policies. Failing to report such an incident can be seen as complicity and a disregard for the principles of a fair examination environment. A further incorrect approach is to rationalize the use of unauthorized assistance by believing that the exam is overly difficult or that everyone else is doing it. This is a form of self-deception that attempts to justify unethical behavior. The difficulty of an exam does not negate the requirement for honest participation, nor does the perceived behavior of others excuse individual misconduct. The ethical framework demands adherence to rules regardless of external pressures or the actions of others. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Alonso de Ojeda University's academic integrity policies and the specific regulations for the entrance exam. When faced with a dilemma, one should first identify the core ethical principles at stake, such as honesty, fairness, and integrity. Then, consider the potential consequences of each course of action, both for oneself and for the institution. Seeking guidance from university officials or trusted mentors can also be a valuable step in navigating complex ethical challenges. Ultimately, the decision should align with established ethical codes and regulatory frameworks, prioritizing integrity over expediency. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that a high-profile student whose academic performance has been consistently average is being considered for an award that requires exceptional academic merit. The student's faculty advisor, under pressure to ensure the student receives the award to enhance the university's public image, has subtly suggested adjusting the student's final grades to meet the award criteria. The individual responsible for finalizing these grades must decide how to proceed. Option A. Ignore the discrepancy and hope that the award committee overlooks the student's actual academic record. Option B. Refuse to adjust the grades and proceed with the accurate assessment, documenting the discrepancy and reporting it through the appropriate university channels for review. Option C. Adjust the student's final grades to meet the award criteria, ensuring the university's positive public relations. Option D. Unilaterally alter the grading rubric for this specific student to justify a higher grade, without consulting any other faculty. The correct answer is C. Adjust the student's final grades to meet the award criteria, ensuring the university's positive public relations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate conflicting priorities between academic integrity and institutional pressure. The core of the challenge lies in upholding ethical standards when faced with a situation that could potentially benefit the university's reputation, but at the expense of accurate representation of student performance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not swayed by external pressures, but are grounded in established principles of fairness and academic honesty. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the academic record and the fairness of the evaluation process. This means ensuring that all students are assessed according to the established criteria and that any deviations are handled transparently and ethically. Specifically, it requires the individual to adhere to the established grading policies and procedures of Alonso de Ojeda University, which are designed to ensure objectivity and prevent undue influence on academic outcomes. This aligns with the fundamental ethical obligation of educators to maintain academic honesty and to provide a fair assessment of student learning. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the discrepancy to avoid negative publicity for the university fails to uphold academic integrity. This action would be a direct violation of ethical principles and potentially university regulations concerning fair assessment and data reporting. It prioritizes institutional image over the accuracy and fairness of student evaluations, undermining the credibility of the university's academic programs. Another incorrect approach, which is to unilaterally change the grading criteria without proper consultation or justification, also constitutes a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses established university procedures for curriculum and assessment review, potentially creating an unfair advantage for one student and disadvantaging others. It demonstrates a lack of adherence to institutional governance and a disregard for due process. Finally, an approach that involves ignoring the issue altogether, hoping it will resolve itself, is professionally irresponsible. This inaction allows an unethical situation to persist, potentially leading to more significant problems down the line and failing to address the root cause of the discrepancy. It represents a failure to exercise due diligence and to act in accordance with professional responsibilities. The professional decision-making framework for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic policies, ethical codes, and reporting guidelines. When faced with a discrepancy, the professional should first gather all relevant facts, consult the established policies, and then, if necessary, seek guidance from appropriate university authorities or ethics committees. The decision should always prioritize transparency, fairness, and the integrity of the academic process. Question 9. Process analysis reveals that a prospective student preparing for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam has obtained study materials that were collaboratively developed by a group of former applicants. The student is unsure about the extent to which they can adapt, rephrase, or incorporate elements from these materials into their own preparation without violating the university's academic integrity policies. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. Option A. The student should proceed to adapt and rephrase the materials as they see fit, assuming that any modification constitutes original work as long as the core ideas are retained. Option B. The student should directly incorporate significant portions of the collaborative materials into their own study notes, believing that the act of studying them is a form of legitimate learning. Option C. The student should consult the official academic affairs office of Alonso de Ojeda University to obtain precise clarification on the acceptable use of collaborative study materials and the definition of original work for the entrance exam. Option D. The student should seek guidance from senior students or online forums that discuss past entrance exam preparation strategies to determine the acceptable level of material adaptation. The correct answer is C. The student should consult the official academic affairs office of Alonso de Ojeda University to obtain precise clarification on the acceptable use of collaborative study materials and the definition of original work for the entrance exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work accurately and the university's established academic integrity policies. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting the boundaries of acceptable collaboration and the definition of original work within the context of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure adherence to these regulations, while also supporting the student's learning process. The correct approach involves the student seeking clarification from the university's academic affairs office regarding the specific guidelines on collaborative work and the acceptable level of assistance for the entrance exam preparation materials. This is the most professionally sound and ethically responsible action because it directly addresses the ambiguity by consulting the authoritative source for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. This proactive step ensures that the student's actions will align with the university's stated policies on academic integrity, preventing potential violations and fostering a transparent approach to their preparation. It demonstrates a commitment to understanding and upholding the rules, which is a fundamental ethical principle in academic and professional settings. An incorrect approach would be for the student to proceed with using the materials without seeking clarification, assuming their interpretation of collaboration is correct. This fails to acknowledge the potential for misinterpretation of university regulations and risks violating academic integrity policies, even if unintentional. The university's framework likely defines specific parameters for acceptable assistance, and a failure to ascertain these parameters constitutes a regulatory oversight. Another incorrect approach would be for the student to significantly alter the original work of others to present it as their own, even with the intention of improving it. This directly contravenes the principle of academic honesty by misrepresenting the origin of the work and could be construed as plagiarism or academic dishonesty under the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exams guidelines. The university's regulations are designed to assess an individual's knowledge and skills, and such actions undermine this objective. A further incorrect approach would be for the student to rely solely on the advice of peers or informal sources for interpreting the exam's collaboration rules. While peer advice can be helpful in some contexts, it is not a substitute for understanding official university regulations. This approach risks perpetuating misunderstandings or misinformation about the exam's requirements, leading to potential academic misconduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulations, a proactive approach to seeking clarification when ambiguity exists, and a commitment to ethical conduct. Professionals should always prioritize adherence to established rules and guidelines, especially in contexts with significant consequences like university entrance exams. When in doubt, consulting the official governing body or relevant authority is the most prudent and ethically sound course of action. Question 10. Research into the Alonso de Ojeda University's admissions process has revealed potential inefficiencies in handling the high volume of applications. The university administration is keen to optimize this process to ensure timely responses to applicants and better resource allocation. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for efficiency with the ethical imperative of fair and equitable admissions? Option A. Introducing a preliminary screening mechanism that prioritizes applications based on a subjective assessment of the applicant's perceived potential beyond stated academic criteria. Option B. conducting a comprehensive data-driven analysis of the entire application lifecycle to identify specific bottlenecks and areas for improvement, while ensuring all evaluation criteria remain objective and consistently applied. Option C. Implementing a phased review system where applications are processed in batches based on submission date, with a strict cutoff for each phase to manage workload. Option D. Significantly reducing the number of applications accepted for review by imposing new, stringent eligibility criteria that were not previously communicated to prospective students. The correct answer is C. Implementing a phased review system where applications are processed in batches based on submission date, with a strict cutoff for each phase to manage workload. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's need for efficient resource allocation and the ethical imperative to ensure fair and equitable access to educational opportunities for all prospective students. The pressure to optimize processes, while a legitimate administrative goal, must be balanced against the principles of fairness and non-discrimination that underpin university admissions. Careful judgment is required to implement process improvements without inadvertently creating barriers or disadvantages for certain applicant groups. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions process, focusing on identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies that do not compromise the integrity or fairness of the evaluation. This includes analyzing data on application processing times, resource utilization, and applicant feedback to pinpoint areas for improvement. The justification for this approach lies in its adherence to principles of good governance and administrative efficiency, which are implicitly expected of any educational institution. Furthermore, it aligns with the ethical obligation to manage university resources responsibly and to strive for a transparent and equitable admission system. By focusing on objective measures of efficiency and fairness, this approach avoids subjective biases and ensures that any changes are data-driven and justifiable. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness would be professionally unacceptable. This would involve rushing the review of applications to meet arbitrary deadlines, potentially leading to overlooking crucial information or making hasty judgments. Such an approach risks compromising the quality of the admissions decision and could result in unfair outcomes for applicants, violating the ethical duty of care and potentially contravening university policies on fair assessment. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing the number of applications processed without a clear rationale for why certain applications are excluded would also be professionally unsound. This could manifest as implementing arbitrary screening criteria that disproportionately affect specific demographics or academic backgrounds, without a demonstrable link to the university's admission standards or objectives. This would be a clear ethical failure, as it could lead to discriminatory practices and undermine the principle of equal opportunity. A third incorrect approach that involves outsourcing the entire admissions process to an external vendor without adequate oversight or a clear understanding of the vendor's methodologies would be problematic. While outsourcing can sometimes improve efficiency, abdicating responsibility for the fairness and integrity of the admissions process to a third party, without robust quality control and adherence to the university's ethical standards, is a significant professional failing. It risks compromising the university's reputation and its commitment to fair admissions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted approach. First, clearly define the objectives of process optimization, ensuring they align with the university's mission and ethical commitments. Second, gather data and evidence to understand the current state of the process and identify specific areas for improvement. Third, consider the potential impact of any proposed changes on all stakeholders, particularly applicants. Fourth, consult relevant university policies, ethical guidelines, and best practices in admissions management. Finally, implement changes incrementally, with continuous monitoring and evaluation to ensure they achieve the desired outcomes without compromising fairness or integrity. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that the admissions committee at Alonso de Ojeda University is reviewing applications for the upcoming academic year. A prominent and long-standing donor to the university has inquired about the admission status of their child, who is also an applicant and has taken the entrance examination. The donor has expressed a strong desire for their child to be admitted and has subtly alluded to the continuation of their significant financial support. The committee, is aware of the donor's influence and the potential impact of their contributions on university resources. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure compliance with the principles of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam and maintain the integrity of the admissions process? Option A. Evaluate the applicant solely based on their performance in the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam and the university's established admission criteria, without any consideration of their parents' donor status or influence. Option B. Create a special review panel for this applicant, separate from the standard admissions process, to assess their potential contribution to the university beyond academic merit. Option C. Expedite the review of the applicant's file and offer them admission if their examination score is within a reasonable range of the admission cutoff, acknowledging the donor's past contributions. Option D. Inform the donor that their child's admission is highly probable due to their family's significant financial support, and that the entrance exam results will be a secondary consideration. The correct answer is A. Evaluate the applicant solely based on their performance in the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam and the university's established admission criteria, without any consideration of their parents' donor status or influence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions where the integrity of the admissions process is paramount. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to merit-based admissions with the potential for external influence or perceived favoritism. Ensuring fairness and transparency while adhering to established university policies and entrance exam regulations is critical. The pressure to accommodate a request that might circumvent standard procedures requires careful judgment to uphold the university's reputation and the principles of equitable opportunity for all applicants. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established regulations and guidelines of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. This means evaluating all applicants, including the child of a prominent donor, based solely on their performance in the entrance examination and the documented admission criteria. This approach is correct because it upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity, which are foundational to academic institutions. It ensures that the admissions process is objective and free from undue influence, thereby maintaining the credibility of the university and the entrance exam itself. This aligns with the implicit regulatory framework of any entrance examination, which prioritizes merit and standardized evaluation. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that involves prioritizing the applicant due to their parents' donor status, without regard for their examination performance, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This would constitute preferential treatment, undermining the integrity of the admissions process and potentially violating the spirit, if not the letter, of the university's entrance exam regulations. Creates an unfair advantage for one applicant over others who have met the standard requirements. Another incorrect approach would be to create a separate, less rigorous evaluation process for the applicant based on their family's influence. This also violates the principle of equal treatment and the standardized nature of a university entrance exam. It suggests that external factors can override objective academic assessment, which is detrimental to academic standards. Finally, an approach that involves subtly lowering the passing threshold or altering the scoring criteria for this specific applicant, even if not overtly stated, is a form of academic dishonesty and a breach of regulatory compliance. It compromises the validity of the examination results and erodes trust in the institution. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions must operate within a clear framework of established policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with requests that could compromise these principles, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the relevant regulations and policies governing the admissions process and entrance examinations. 2. Assessing the request against these established rules, focusing on fairness, objectivity, and merit. 3. Consulting with relevant university authorities or ethics committees if the situation presents ambiguity or potential conflict. 4. Prioritizing adherence to the established regulatory framework, even when faced with pressure or influence. 5. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them to ensure transparency and accountability. Question 12. Comparative studies suggest that students facing significant personal challenges often grapple with the pressure to perform well in high-stakes academic assessments. Considering the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, if a student is experiencing severe family distress that is impacting their ability to prepare adequately and perform optimally, which of the following actions best aligns with the principles of academic integrity and the likely regulatory framework of such an examination? Option A. Attempting to find and use unauthorized study guides or notes that claim to contain exam answers to improve their chances of success. Option B. Proactively contacting the university admissions office to explain the extenuating circumstances and inquire about potential accommodations or a deferral of the examination. Option C. Asking a classmate for help with specific questions during the examination itself. Option D. Proceeding with the exam as scheduled without informing anyone of their personal difficulties, hoping to overcome the challenges through sheer willpower. The correct answer is B. Proactively contacting the university admissions office to explain the extenuating circumstances and inquire about potential accommodations or a deferral of the examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. Pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, especially when facing personal difficulties, can lead to ethically compromised decisions. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of honesty and fairness, while also acknowledging the human element of student challenges. The correct approach involves a student proactively and honestly communicating their extenuating circumstances to the university administration before the exam. This demonstrates a commitment to academic integrity by seeking legitimate accommodations rather than resorting to illicit means. The regulatory framework of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, as implied by its nature as an entrance examination, would undoubtedly prioritize academic honesty and adherence to established procedures. Seeking official channels for support or deferral, if available, aligns with these principles. This proactive disclosure allows the university to assess the situation fairly and offer appropriate solutions, such as a rescheduled exam or alternative assessment methods, without undermining the integrity of the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to access unauthorized materials or seek assistance from others during the exam. This directly violates the core principles of academic integrity and the specific regulations governing entrance examinations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field for all candidates. Such actions constitute academic misconduct, leading to severe penalties including disqualification from the exam and potential blacklisting from future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the personal difficulties and proceed with the exam without seeking any form of support or accommodation. While this might seem like a way to avoid direct rule breaking, it fails to address the underlying issue and could lead to a compromised performance due to undue stress, which is not a reflection of the student's true capabilities. Furthermore, it misses an opportunity to engage with the university's support systems, which are often in place to assist students facing genuine challenges. A final incorrect approach would be to seek assistance from a peer or external party during the exam to gain an unfair advantage. This is a clear breach of examination rules and constitutes cheating. It undermines the validity of the assessment and is a serious ethical violation that the university's regulatory framework would strictly prohibit. The professional decision-making process for a student in such a situation should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical implications of their situation and the potential for academic misconduct. 2. Understanding the university's regulations regarding academic integrity and examination procedures. 3. Prioritizing honest and transparent communication with the university administration. 4. Exploring legitimate avenues for support or accommodation before the exam takes place. Question 13. System analysis indicates that a new administrative software has been developed that could significantly reduce the time required for processing applicant data for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. However, the implementation of this software would involve a minor alteration to the standard data entry protocol currently outlined in the exam's procedural manual. Before proceeding with the integration of this new software, what is the most appropriate course of action according to the regulatory framework of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam? Option A. Implement the new software immediately to leverage its efficiency benefits, assuming that minor procedural adjustments are implicitly permitted for process improvement. Option B. Proceed with the software implementation and document the procedural change internally, relying on the assumption that the university's administration will approve it post-implementation if it proves effective. Option C. Consult with IT professionals to ensure the software is technically sound, and then proceed with its integration, as the technical functionality is the primary concern for efficient data processing. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the official regulations and guidelines for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam to determine if such procedural alterations are permissible, and if not, seek formal approval from the designated examination authority for any proposed changes. The correct answer is A. Implement the new software immediately to leverage its efficiency benefits, assuming that minor procedural adjustments are implicitly permitted for process improvement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to streamline administrative processes for efficiency and the absolute necessity of adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. The university's entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any deviation from established procedures, even with the intention of improvement, risks compromising the integrity and fairness of the selection process. Careful judgment is required to balance potential efficiency gains with strict compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's official regulations and guidelines to identify any provisions that permit or prohibit the proposed process optimization. If the regulations are silent or ambiguous on the specific optimization, the professional course of action would be to seek formal clarification or approval from the designated examination authority within the university. This ensures that any changes are implemented within the bounds of the law and ethical standards, safeguarding the validity of the exam. This approach is correct because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and institutional integrity above all else. It acknowledges that the exam's framework is not a suggestion, but a set of binding rules designed to ensure fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants. Seeking formal approval demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and responsible administration. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally implement process changes based on a subjective interpretation of efficiency without consulting the official regulations. This fails to acknowledge the legal and procedural requirements of the exam. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that general best practices in process optimization automatically apply to a highly regulated context like a university entrance exam. This overlooks the specific mandates and restrictions imposed by the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's governing framework. A further incorrect approach would be to prioritize perceived time or cost savings over strict adherence to established protocols, thereby potentially introducing bias or procedural errors that could invalidate the exam results or lead to legal challenges. Each of these incorrect approaches risks violating the specific regulations of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, undermining its credibility, and potentially leading to disciplinary action or legal repercussions. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the governing regulations. This involves identifying all relevant rules, policies, and guidelines pertaining to the exam's administration. Next, they should assess the proposed optimization against these regulations, looking for explicit permissions, prohibitions, or areas requiring interpretation. If ambiguity exists, the framework dictates seeking official guidance or approval from the appropriate university body. This systematic, compliance-first approach ensures that all actions are legally sound and ethically defensible, protecting both the institution and the integrity of the examination process. Question 14. Regulatory review indicates that the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam has specific guidelines for processing applications, where certain criteria are designated as absolute priority. A new administrative assistant, tasked with initial application screening, believes they can significantly speed up the process by categorizing applications based on general academic merit, rather than strictly adhering to the exam's defined absolute priority criteria. Which approach best upholds the integrity of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Implement a system that prioritizes applications with incomplete documentation, as this often indicates a need for faster processing to allow candidates to submit missing information. Option B. Expedite the review by categorizing applications based on general academic merit, assuming this aligns with the spirit of absolute priority without consulting the exam's specific guidelines. Option C. Strictly adhere to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's defined absolute priority criteria for initial screening, ensuring all applications are evaluated against these specific, mandated requirements before any further processing. Option D. Seek advice from admissions officers at other universities to understand their absolute priority processing methods, applying those principles to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam applications. The correct answer is C. Strictly adhere to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's defined absolute priority criteria for initial screening, ensuring all applications are evaluated against these specific, mandated requirements before any further processing. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic integrity within the specific context of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient processing of applications with the absolute imperative of upholding the integrity of the examination process. Misinterpreting or misapplying the regulatory framework can lead to either the exclusion of deserving candidates or the admission of unqualified ones, both of which undermine the university's standards and reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process optimization does not compromise fairness or compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict adherence to the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's established regulatory framework, specifically focusing on the guidelines for application processing and the definition of absolute priority within that context. This approach prioritizes compliance with the university's own rules, ensuring that all applications are evaluated according to the defined criteria without introducing external or subjective biases. The regulatory justification is rooted in the principle of procedural fairness and the explicit mandate of the exam's governing body. Ethically, this approach upholds the university's commitment to a transparent and equitable admissions process. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on expediting the review process without considering the specific absolute priority criteria would be a significant regulatory failure. This would violate the principle of equal treatment and could lead to arbitrary decisions, potentially disadvantaging candidates who meet the priority requirements but whose applications are not flagged due to a superficial processing method. Another incorrect approach, which involves seeking external advice or interpretations not sanctioned by the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam's official guidelines, constitutes an ethical and regulatory breach. This introduces the risk of applying irrelevant or conflicting standards, thereby compromising the integrity of the exam's unique regulatory framework. A third incorrect approach, which involves making assumptions about the absolute priority based on general university admission practices rather than the exam's specific regulations, is also a failure. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in understanding the precise requirements of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, leading to potential misapplication of its rules. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should begin with a comprehensive review of the specific regulatory framework governing the task at hand. This involves identifying all relevant laws, university policies, and examination guidelines. Next, one must critically analyze the scenario to understand how the established regulations apply. This includes defining key terms like absolute priority within the specific context. The decision-making process should then involve selecting the approach that demonstrably aligns with and upholds these regulations, prioritizing compliance and fairness above all else. If ambiguity exists, the professional should seek clarification from the appropriate authority within the Alonso de Ojeda University system, rather than making assumptions or deviating from established procedures. Question 15. Consider a scenario where a prospective student preparing for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam is feeling overwhelmed by the volume of material and the perceived difficulty of the assessment. This student learns that a friend, who recently took a similar entrance exam at another institution, has retained some of the questions from that exam and is willing to share them. The student is tempted to review these questions, believing it might help them identify common themes or question types. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity and the regulations of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam? Option A. The student politely declines the offer of the previous exam questions, explaining that they must prepare independently and ethically for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. Option B. The student asks their friend to share the questions, but only to understand the general format and difficulty, not the specific content. Option C. The student uses the previous exam questions as a study guide, focusing on the topics covered without memorizing specific answers. Option D. The student accepts the previous exam questions and reviews them, rationalizing that it is for a different institution and therefore not a direct violation. The correct answer is A. The student politely declines the offer of the previous exam questions, explaining that they must prepare independently and ethically for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam can lead individuals to seek shortcuts, but such actions undermine the fairness and validity of the assessment process. Careful judgment is required to navigate these pressures ethically and in accordance with the exam's regulations. The correct approach involves the student independently preparing for the exam, utilizing only authorized study materials, and adhering strictly to the examination rules regarding prohibited aids. This aligns with the core principles of academic honesty and the specific guidelines of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, which implicitly or explicitly prohibit any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. Upholding these standards ensures a level playing field for all candidates and demonstrates respect for the educational institution's commitment to meritocracy. An incorrect approach that involves seeking advance information about exam questions from a current student is a direct violation of academic integrity. This constitutes an act of cheating, as it provides an unfair advantage and compromises the integrity of the examination. Such behavior would be met with severe disciplinary action by the university, potentially including disqualification from the exam and future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach, such as using unauthorized notes or electronic devices during the exam, is also a clear breach of the exam's regulations. These actions are designed to prevent candidates from accessing external information, thereby ensuring that their performance reflects their own knowledge and understanding. Engaging in such practices is a form of academic dishonesty and will lead to immediate disqualification and potential sanctions. A further incorrect approach, like collaborating with other candidates during the exam, undermines the individual assessment nature of the entrance exam. The exam is designed to evaluate each student's personal capabilities. Collaboration during the test is a form of cheating that distorts the assessment of individual merit and violates the principle of fair competition. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and unwavering commitment to the ethical principles of academic integrity. Candidates must prioritize honesty, fairness, and respect for the rules and regulations governing any assessment. When faced with pressure or temptation, individuals should reflect on the long-term consequences of their actions and choose the path that upholds their personal integrity and the standards of the institution. This involves self-discipline, seeking clarification on any ambiguous rules, and resisting any urge to gain an unfair advantage. Question 16. Process analysis reveals that the Alonso de Ojeda University's admissions committee is reviewing an application for a highly sought-after program. The candidate's academic scores are slightly below the stated minimum requirement, but they have a compelling essay and significant extracurricular leadership experience that aligns with the program's objectives. Committee member responsible for the final decision is aware that the candidate's family has strong ties to the university's alumni network, which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for university admissions at Alonso de Ojeda University. Option A. Recommend admission based on the candidate's strong alumni connections and potential future contributions, assuming these factors can compensate for the slightly lower academic scores. Without a detailed reevaluation of the application against all stated criteria. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the candidate's entire application, weighing academic performance against demonstrated leadership and the quality of their essay, in accordance with the university's stated admission criteria and any provisions for holistic review, while ensuring the alumni connection does not influence the objective assessment. Option C. Advocate for a special waiver of the minimum academic score based on the alumni connection, suggesting that this external factor warrants an exception to the standard admission regulations to secure a potentially valuable future alumnus. Option D. Reject the application outright due to the candidate's failure to meet the minimum academic score, without considering the strength of their essay or extracurricular achievements, as this is the most straightforward interpretation of the numerical requirement. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the candidate's entire application, weighing academic performance against demonstrated leadership and the quality of their essay, in accordance with the university's stated admission criteria and any provisions for holistic review, while ensuring the alumni connection does not influence the objective assessment. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to admit a candidate who may not fully meet the established criteria. The admissions committee must exercise careful judgment to uphold the university's standards while considering all relevant factors, ensuring fairness and transparency in the decision-making process. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the candidate's application against the Alonso de Ojeda University's established admission regulations and guidelines. This includes scrutinizing academic records, extracurricular achievements, and any supplementary materials provided, all within the framework of the university's stated admission policies. The regulatory justification lies in adhering to the principles of fairness, equity, and meritocracy that underpin university admissions. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to upholding the integrity of the academic program and ensuring that all admitted students have the potential to succeed, thereby protecting the reputation of the institution and the value of its degrees. An incorrect approach that prioritizes personal connections or perceived future potential without rigorous adherence to established criteria fails to comply with the university's admission regulations. This bypasses the objective assessment mandated by the framework, potentially leading to the admission of underqualified candidates and undermining the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Such an action would be an ethical failure, as it compromises the integrity of the admissions process and could be perceived as favoritism, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on meeting a minimum numerical threshold without considering the holistic profile of the candidate also deviates from best practices. While numerical criteria are important, university admissions often require a broader evaluation. Ignoring qualitative aspects or unique circumstances, if permitted by the university's guidelines, could lead to overlooking promising candidates who might otherwise contribute significantly to the university community. This could be an ethical lapse if the university's guidelines explicitly allow for a more nuanced evaluation. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Clearly understanding and referencing the specific admission regulations and guidelines of Alonso de Ojeda University. 2. Establishing objective criteria for evaluation and ensuring consistent application of these criteria to all applicants. 3. Documenting the rationale for all admission decisions, especially for borderline cases. 4. Seeking consensus among committee members based on the evidence and the established framework, rather than individual biases or external pressures. 5. Escalating complex or contentious decisions to a higher authority within the university if the established framework does not provide clear guidance. Question 17. The investigation demonstrates that a member of the Alonso de Ojeda University Entrance Exam Evaluation Committee has a close family member applying for admission. This situation presents a potential conflict of interest that could compromise the fairness of the evaluation process. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity and regulatory compliance for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam? Option A. Discreetly provide feedback to the family member on how to improve their application before the official evaluation. Option B. Ignore the familial relationship and proceed with the evaluation, assuming personal objectivity will prevail. Option C. Proceed with evaluating the applicant's submission, ensuring to be extra objective to compensate for any potential bias. Option D. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to the admissions committee and request to be recused from evaluating any applications from relatives. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to the admissions committee and request to be recused from evaluating any applications from relatives. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate a situation where a potential conflict of interest may arise, impacting the integrity of an academic process. The core of the challenge lies in maintaining objectivity and fairness in the evaluation of candidates for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, ensuring that personal relationships do not unduly influence the outcome. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's commitment to meritocracy and equal opportunity. The correct approach involves a transparent and proactive disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the relevant university authorities. This demonstrates an understanding of ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. By recapping what the correct approach involves, it means immediately informing the admissions committee or designated oversight body about the familial relationship with one of the applicants. This allows the university to implement appropriate measures, such as recusal from the evaluation process or assigning the application to another assessor, thereby safeguarding the impartiality of the exam. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and the regulatory framework governing university admissions, which implicitly or explicitly mandate fairness and the avoidance of undue influence. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with evaluating the applicant's submission without disclosing the relationship. This failure constitutes a breach of ethical conduct by creating an environment where bias, even if unintentional, could influence the assessment. It violates the principle of fairness and could lead to an unfair advantage for the applicant, undermining the credibility of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to subtly influence the evaluation process in favor of the relative, perhaps by highlighting certain aspects of their application or downplaying weaknesses. This is a direct violation of ethical standards and potentially academic regulations, as it represents a deliberate attempt to manipulate the outcome for personal gain, compromising the integrity of the entire admission system. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential conflict and hope it goes unnoticed. This passive approach is still a failure, as it neglects the professional responsibility to proactively address and mitigate potential ethical breaches. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of transparency in academic evaluations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. 1. Identify the potential conflict of interest. 2. Understand the relevant university policies and ethical guidelines. 3. Disclose the conflict immediately and transparently to the appropriate authority. 4. Follow the prescribed procedures for recusal or mitigation. 5. Prioritize the integrity of the process and the fairness of the outcome above personal relationships. Question 18. The analysis reveals that an applicant to the Alonso de Ojeda University's Bachelor of Arts program has a strong personal statement and compelling extracurricular involvement, but their academic transcripts show a significant dip in performance during their final 2 years of secondary education, coinciding with documented family health issues. The admissions committee is tasked with evaluating this application, which approach best aligns with the university's stated commitment to fostering a diverse and inclusive student body while upholding academic integrity. Option A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's file, considering the academic performance within the context of the family health issues, and assess their potential for success based on their personal statement and extracurriculars. Option B. Forward the application directly to the Dean of Admissions for an immediate decision, bypassing the standard committee review process due to the unusual circumstances. Option C. Reject the application outright due to the lower-than-average academic performance in the most recent years, as this indicates a lack of current academic rigor. Option D. Request a formal reevaluation of the applicant's secondary school transcripts from their previous institution to verify the accuracy of the grades before proceeding with any assessment. The correct answer is A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's file, considering the academic performance within the context of the family health issues, and assess their potential for success based on their personal statement and extracurriculars. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions, where an applicant's background might raise questions about their suitability based on established criteria. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic standards and fairness with the need to consider diverse applicant backgrounds and potential. A careful judgment is required to ensure that the admission decision is both equitable and aligned with the university's mission and regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's academic record within the context of their socioeconomic background and any extenuating circumstances. This approach aligns with the Alonso de Ojeda University's stated commitment to diversity and inclusion, as well as general principles of fairness and equity in admissions. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of the university's admission guidelines which, while emphasizing academic merit, also allow for consideration of broader applicant profiles to foster a well-rounded student body. This method ensures that talented individuals are not unfairly excluded due to circumstances beyond their control, promoting social mobility and enriching the academic environment. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the applicant's lower-than-average grades without considering the mitigating factors presented. This rigid adherence to a single metric fails to acknowledge the applicant's potential and the university's stated values of inclusivity. It could lead to an unfair exclusion of a promising candidate and would be contrary to the university's broader objectives of creating a diverse and representative student population. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the established admissions committee and directly admit the applicant based on a personal appeal or recommendation from a faculty member. This circumvents the established regulatory framework for admissions, undermining the integrity of the process and potentially creating a perception of favoritism. It violates the principle of standardized and objective evaluation that is crucial for maintaining trust and fairness in university admissions. A third incorrect approach would be to automatically reject the applicant based on a perceived lack of preparedness, without a thorough review of their application and supporting documentation. This premature dismissal ignores the possibility that the applicant, with appropriate support, could succeed. It fails to engage in the due diligence required by the university's admissions process and misses an opportunity to identify potential talent that might not fit a narrow definition of academic readiness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the university's admission policies and guidelines, including any provisions for considering extenuating circumstances. It requires an objective evaluation of all submitted materials, a willingness to seek clarification or additional information if needed, and a commitment to a fair and transparent process. Professionals should always prioritize adherence to established procedures and ethical considerations, ensuring that decisions are well-reasoned and defensible. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a high probability of a student experiencing significant anxiety regarding the upcoming advanced financial analysis examination due to its perceived complexity and the student's current level of preparation. The student has overheard a rumor that some students are considering obtaining advanced copies of the exam questions. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for this student? Option A. Contact the professor to request a review of specific challenging topics and explore options for additional study resources or clarification before the exam. Option B. Discreetly inquire among peers about the possibility of obtaining advanced copies of the exam questions to ensure a passing grade. Option C. Focus solely on studying the provided course materials, accepting the risk of a lower grade if unprepared, and avoid any discussion of exam content with others. Option D. Immediately report the overheard rumor about potential exam question leaks to the course professor, expressing concerns about academic integrity. The correct answer is B. Discreetly inquire among peers about the possibility of obtaining advanced copies of the exam questions to ensure a passing grade. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well, coupled with the perceived difficulty of an upcoming examination, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation, upholding ethical principles while respecting the university's regulations. The The correct approach involves a direct and honest communication with the professor regarding the student's concerns about the exam's difficulty and their preparedness. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity, fundamental to academic and professional life. Specifically, it adheres to the Alonso de Ojeda University's Code of Ethics, which emphasizes truthful representation of one's abilities and avoidance of any form of academic dishonesty. By seeking clarification and additional resources, the student demonstrates a commitment to genuine learning and fair assessment, rather than seeking an unfair advantage. This proactive engagement fosters a transparent relationship with the instructor and upholds the academic standards of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to share the exam questions with other students. This action constitutes academic dishonesty, a direct violation of the Alonso de Ojeda University's academic integrity policy. It undermines the fairness of the examination process, disadvantages students who have prepared honestly, and erodes the credibility of the university's assessments. Furthermore, it breaches the trust placed in students to uphold ethical conduct. Another incorrect approach would be to purchase exam questions from an external source. This is a form of cheating and academic misconduct, directly contravening the university's regulations against plagiarism and unauthorized assistance. It not only compromises the integrity of the examination, but also exposes the student to severe disciplinary actions, including expulsion. This approach prioritizes a superficial outcome over genuine learning and ethical behavior. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's concerns and proceed with the exam without seeking any clarification or support. While not actively dishonest, this passive approach fails to address the underlying issue of preparedness and can lead to undue stress and potentially poor performance, which might then tempt the student towards unethical behavior later. It misses an opportunity to engage constructively with the academic process and demonstrate resilience and a commitment to learning. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the ethical conflict. Recognize the tension between personal goals and ethical obligations. 2. Consulting relevant regulations and codes of conduct. Familiarize oneself with the Alonso de Ojeda University's policies on academic integrity and ethical behavior. 3. Seeking clarification and support. Engage with appropriate university resources, such as professors, academic advisors, or student support services, to address concerns constructively. 4. Prioritizing integrity and honesty. Make decisions that align with ethical principles, even if they present short-term challenges. 5. Considering the long-term consequences, evaluate the impact of decisions on one's academic record, reputation, and personal integrity. Question 20. To address the challenge of accurately presenting one's academic background and achievements for the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, which of the following actions best reflects the required ethical and regulatory standards for applicants? Option A. Slightly embellishing the description of extracurricular activities to highlight leadership qualities and a broader range of experiences beyond formal academics. Option B. Omitting any mention of a minor academic disciplinary issue from a previous educational institution, assuming it is no longer relevant to the current application. Option C. Providing a completely truthful and accurate representation of all academic records, extracurricular involvement, and any relevant personal circumstances, even if some details might be perceived as less advantageous. Option D. Utilizing online services that offer to enhance personal essays to make them more compelling and persuasive to the admissions committee. The correct answer is C. Providing a completely truthful and accurate representation of all academic records, extracurricular involvement, and any relevant personal circumstances, even if some details might be perceived as less advantageous. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma faced by individuals seeking admission to a university: the temptation to misrepresent qualifications to gain an advantage. This is professionally challenging because it tests integrity, honesty, and adherence to the principles of fair competition and academic merit. The Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, like any reputable academic institution, relies on the authenticity of applicant information to ensure a just and equitable selection process. Misrepresentation undermines this foundation, potentially leading to the admission of unqualified candidates and the rejection of deserving ones. The correct approach involves complete honesty and accurate self-representation. This aligns directly with the core ethical principles of academic integrity and the specific guidelines of the Alonso de Ojeda University entrance exam, which implicitly or explicitly require truthful disclosure of all information. By presenting an accurate academic record and truthfully answering all questions, the applicant upholds the values of the university and demonstrates the character expected of its students. This approach avoids any potential for academic misconduct or disciplinary action, ensuring a clear and ethical path to admission. An incorrect approach of exaggerating academic achievements, such as inflating grades or falsely claiming participation in extracurricular activities, constitutes academic dishonesty. This violates the fundamental principle of truthfulness expected in any application process. Such misrepresentation, if discovered, would lead to immediate disqualification and could result in a permanent ban from future admissions to the university. It demonstrates a lack of integrity and a willingness to circumvent established rules for personal gain, which are antithetical to the values of academic institutions. Another incorrect approach of omitting relevant academic information, even if not explicitly false, can also be considered misleading. For instance, failing to disclose a previous academic disciplinary action or a significant academic setback, when such information might be relevant to the applicant's overall profile, can create a false impression. This omission, while not an outright lie, can still be interpreted as an attempt to deceive the admissions committee and undermine the principle of full disclosure. It fails to provide a complete and transparent picture of the applicant's academic journey. A further incorrect approach of seeking assistance from unauthorized sources to complete application components, such as having someone else write essays or answer specific questions, is also a violation. This undermines the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess the individual applicant's knowledge, skills, and suitability. Relying on external help compromises the authenticity of the application and is a form of academic misconduct. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the application requirements and the ethical guidelines of the institution. Applicants should always err on the side of caution and transparency. If there is any doubt about how to present information, it is best to seek clarification from the university's admissions office. The guiding principle should be to present a truthful and complete picture, allowing the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on genuine qualifications and character.